In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw project 2-3. We'll start out drawing the head of a socket. We'll hollow out some of the holes, and then what we'll wind up doing is we will create the handle on the socket. So let's begin, and before we start, we always want to make sure that we are saving our stuff in the proper folder. So we're going to open up our data panel. And here I'm in the wrong folder for my class. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my home project list, and I've been saving these in a folder called POM. So there's my first two right there. What I want to do is I want to save this as 2-3. We'll click save before we even start. Alright, so now that we are set up, let's take a look at our part. We have a socket head that we're going to have two circles that are going to be 3/4 of an inch apart, and then we are going to draw two tangent lines on them. So I'm going to go back to Fusion, and I'm going to create a sketch, and this one I'm going to put on our XY plane. So our XY, remember our X's are green, our Y is red, Z is that blue plane, and we'll be doing more in the Z plane later on. And to take a look, we have a radius of 0.6 for our bottom circle, and I have a radius of 0.75 for our top circle. We want to remember that our radius is half of our diameter, so when we draw our circles, it gives us a diameter, so 0.6 times 2 is 1.2, so that's going to be our bottom one. And this point is 0.75, sorry, that point is about 0.75 above that point. So I'm going to create a construction line. So create a line, change it to a construction line, and I start from that center point and go up 0.75. And now I'm going to change it back to my regular object line, and I'm going to create another circle and put it on the top of this line. And this is going to be a radius of 0.75 or a diameter of 1.5, because our diameter is twice that of our radius. So now I have two overlapping circles, and I want to draw my two sides here. So I'm going to draw a line, and I'm just going to have it to the side. We'll hit the check mark to complete it, and then the same thing right there. It doesn't really matter the angle or the distance, because the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make this line tangent to both that circle and that circle, and the same thing on this side. So I'm going to select my tangent constraint, because we notice that these two circles are fully constrained. The lines are all black, these two are still blue, so we need to constrain these. I'm going to take my tangent constraint, select the line, and select my top circle, same thing with this bottom one, so that now this one is tangent with that side. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side as well. The last thing we want to do is we want to trim it. So if you don't have your trim right there, you can click modify and go down to trim, or you can use the letter T on your keyboard as a shortcut. And we're going to trim away the lines that we don't need. So we don't need those. I don't need that line right there. Don't need that line. And we will trim away that right there. So when we are finished, we're going to click Finish Sketch, and there we have our completed sketch. The next thing that we want to do, so we'll go back to the print and we'll take a look, and it is 1 inch the entire way, and that will be really important later on. And also, from there to there is 83 degrees, or from, if we were to draw a vertical line right there going in, that would be 7 degrees coming in. So we'll do that all in this extrude. So I'm going to extrude this sketch right here, and on the side in our extrude window, I'm going to, instead of just having one side for our direction, I'm going to do a symmetric extrude. And then we want to make sure that we're going to be using a distance, and it's going to be the whole length. So if you remember, our distance was 1 inch, meaning that it is going to measure 1 inch the entire way. If I did this first one, right, it would only be inch measurement on one side, so that would be actually 2 inches, but I want to do a whole length of 1 inch. And just a reminder, to be able to orbit around, you hold down shift in your scroll wheel to be able to do that. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to put in a 7-degree taper. But if I put in a 7-degree taper, it goes out. And if we look at the print, I want it to go in right there. So instead of tapering it like that, I'm going to change my 7-degree to a -7-degree. And there we have the shape that we want, and we'll press OK. And now you will see that we have a new body over here, as well as we have all of our sketches being built up in our browser. So let's go back to our print, and we'll go to the next section. And we have a bunch of holes and different offsets and everything. So the first thing that I want to take a look at is this portion right here. We can see right there that it is offset by 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch, and that's been rounded up to 0.13. So we're going to do an offset of 1/8 of an inch, and then we are going to extrude that down 1/8 of an inch. So we'll go back to Fusion, and I'm going to create a sketch on this front plane, and it'll bring us normal too. I'm going to create an offset, which is, sorry, it is in our modify, so I'm going to offset that outside line, and we are going to go -0.125, and that will bring me in 1/8 of an inch. We'll press OK, and then we will finish that sketch, and we will do an extrude cut at -0.125. So that will cut our part in 1/8 of an inch. So that's the first step. Let's go back to the print. And the next step is we have this cutaway, which would be this pocket right here. We're not going to worry about these holes yet. Those holes go all the way through, but we just have this cutaway. And here we have a radius of 0.5, which if we were to draw that as a circle, it'd be a diameter of 1 inch. And then the same thing right here, we have a radius of 0.35 or a diameter of 0.7. So I'm going to come back to Fusion, create a sketch on that flat inside part that we have right here. Do not put your sketch on that face. We want to make sure that we select that face. We'll bring that normal too. And my bottom circle was 0.7 in diameter. So we'll type in 0.7 and hit enter. And this top one, we don't really have a point there just yet, but if we highlight our outside and we come down, we can see that we have a center point where it snaps to a circle, and that is going to be the center point of this arc right there. So we'll come on down, and I have a center point right there, and this was a diameter of 1 inch or a radius of 0.5. So just like before, I'm going to come in and I'm going to trim away the parts that I don't need, and we'll finish that sketch. Come back to the print, and from that point to that point, we extrude cut down 0.75. Come back to Fusion, extrude cut down -0.75. Make a cut, press OK, and now we are almost done with the top. We just need to put in our 2 circles down there. I come back here, and these 2 circles are 3/8 of an inch, 0.375. We'll go back to Fusion 360, and we'll create a sketch. Again, make sure that we are going on that bottom face, and create a center diameter circle. Right there, that's going to be 0.375. And then I'm going to create another circle coming off of our origin that's going to be 0.375. We'll finish that sketch, and we'll extrude cut that all the way through. So now we have the top of our socket head. The last step that we want to do is we want to create our handle here. So when we want to extrude this, or when we want to model this or create this, we're going to want to cut this or we're going to want to draw a sketch and then extrude it back. However, if we were to try and put a sketch on here, because it's a curved surface, we're never going to be able to actually draw on there because we have a curved surface. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to create a construction plane at this surface right here. We'll draw a sketch on there, and then we will extrude back to our socket head. All right. So to be able to do that, we'll just double check. We have a dimension of 3.75. So we have a flat plane right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create an offset plane, and I want to select my XZ plane. Remember, X is red, Z is blue. I'm going to select my XZ plane, and I want to bring that down that dimension that we had before, which was negative 3.75. So now out here we have a construction plane, or we have a flat surface that we're able to put a sketch on. So let's take a look back at that, at our print, and our diameter for this portion is 1/2 inch. So we'll go back to Fusion. I'm going to select my center diameter circle, and I'm going to select 0.5 for diameter on this. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to extrude this back to my socket head. However, if I just bring this back, what'll happen is it won't quite line up perfectly. I'll have some gaps. Or if I bring it too far, what can happen is if I don't have it cut, if I have it joined, we can start poking through. So when you have instances like this, what we can do is our extent type, instead of doing a distance, is we can do a to object, and that will allow us to select our faces. And then we want to select two adjacent faces. Okay. So if you just do to the selected faces, it may give us a error. But what we want to do is we want to select two adjacent faces. And what that's going to do is that's going to say, hey, we want to extrude from this plane right here, and you're just going to keep on going until we hit a face over here, and then you're going to stop for that extrude. And now we can see that it is meshed in exactly how we want it. All right. So we'll go back to the print. And the last thing that we have is we have a rectangular handle that is 4 inches by 1 inches. However, we have this draft on the sides that we can see down there, so that it's a little bit angled to relieve any sharp edges. So to be able to do that, instead of trying to draw from here coming back, that would only give us a rectangle. What I'm going to do is I am going to create a sketch, but it is going to be on this top face. Now remember, when we created this, our origin is right in the center plane of this. So I'm going to select my XY plane, and I'm going to create a 2-point rectangle. And for right now, it doesn't really matter how big it is or where we put it. Just put it somewhere close to the bottom where it should be in our handle. So let's take a look at the print. It is centered, and it's 1 inch wide, which would mean that from here to the center point is going to be 1/2 inch. And it is 4 inches tall and 3.75 from that center point down. So I'm going to dimension, and to be able to select your dimension, you can either do create sketch dimension, or you can click on sketch dimension right there, or you can press D on your keyboard, which is a shortcut key to do a dimension. So I'm going to select this side right here. I'm going to select that point for our origin. I'm going to type in 0.5. I'm going to have a width of 1 inch. From this point down to the top, it is going to be 3.75. and then the overall height of this is going to be 4 inches. So what we can do then is we can finish that sketch, and we'll extrude this and double check our print. It is 0.75 thick, or 3/4 of an inch thick, with again that 7-degree draft angle on there. So how we did that is we change our direction to symmetric. It is going to be a whole length of 0.75 with a taper angle of -7 degrees. And before we hit OK, we're just going to double check that our draft angle is going the right way. Just a reminder, if I put regular 7, it would go out, which would be a fairly painful wrench to be using. So we're going to put it at -7, press OK. Alright. The last thing we have are our fillets that we're going to be putting in. So we want to ease our corners. Around here we have a radius of, or sorry, a diameter of 0.12, a radius of 0.06. And then we also have a radius of 0.06 there at all 4 of our corners. And on these edges right here, we have a radius of 1/8 of an inch. So we'll go back to the Fusion. And I'm going to select a fillet. And I'm going to select all 4 corners of these. And our radius for that is going to be 0.125. And then the last one is we are going to be going on the top, on the bottom, and then around here, and that is going to be a radius of 0.06. So we have that one, that one, and that is going to be a radius of 0.06 for center. And now your ratchet is complete. Make sure that we save this when you're done, and then you can show your instructor.